So this is my second year uni final piece. My main outcome is to create a film noir sort of satire parody called the Mike Caruba Files, Case of Missing Identity. The main premise of this final piece is mainly to do with a film noir setting. Something that, yes, you see a lot of in student films, but you don't see in the industry anymore. They were mainly quite relevant and well known throughout the early 30s to kind of the early 60s, kind of hitting its high streak around about the 40s era. But nowadays, because we have colour films, or films in colour, there is not much of a demographic or supply and demand need for a film noir-esque style, considering the main usage of film noir is usage of light. Strong light indicating shadows, how sets are set up, kind of like silhouettes, very mysterious, as well as conveying an almost symbolic purpose considering what scenario you're going for. A silhouette against a wall could indicate a suspicious person. Blinds across a character's face, or the shadow of blinds across a character's face could indicate that they are mysterious. Maybe they are hiding something. Maybe they are someone not to be trusted who seems to keep saying they need to be trusted, or maybe the reverse. A lot of my research has gone into very wide spectrum of different forms of what's motivated, inspired, and kind of had their own little input in their own little way towards my final piece and the idea process towards it. So, without further ado, let's get on with it. In walks this dame, dressed to the nines and clearly not for being around these parts. Hair done up delicately, perfumed enough to taste on your tongue, and eyes underlying a hidden personality from those who aren't observant, with a sharp wit to boot.
I can hear you, you know.
When looking up this film production, you gotta look for inspiration. And I found quite a bit. In fact, the whole premise of this was technically based off a t-shirt commercial. One of the channels that I watch on YouTube made a t-shirt advertisement based off one of the running jokes they had in one of their series about Mike Caruba or Mike Caruba or Mike Aruba.
Mike Caruba, private eye investigating a missing person.
And I thought, oh, Mike Caruba, kind of like a little nod to them. Film noir has been a big influence. In fact, I watched a few films to kind of get the whole tone and aspect, but admittedly, it was down to a Lego animated short by Minifigmanstudios, or Zach MG, I think he goes by now. And he had made one called Cinema Monologues, and the whole joke was kind of how it was set up like a detective scene, and the guy's, his inner thoughts are being heard, and he's just thinking, and he's monologuing, much like the title suggests. A dame walks in, and then it kind of snaps to reality where actually all that talking in their head, the reality of the situation is that they're not saying anything. They're just looking around the room, staring at each other, looking here, there, kind of just twiddling their thumbs a bit. But all that intense monologuing on the inside, in their heads and stuff, is just that. There is no communication between the two whatsoever. And that honestly made me think, oh, that's quite funny, and does kind of set up for the jokes of like Mike Caruba.
What can I get you?
I figured coming to this bar would be a salvation to my problems in more ways than one. or at the least further my journey in the case.
Let me rephrase that. What can I get you that you haven't already taken?
Unfortunately, there's a few jokes I actually had to cut out because, one, it was more primarily the fact that I didn't know where to put them, more so than I didn't know, I didn't have time. So, really the whole point of a joke in a scene is that it works, the scene still flows, things like that. This didn't, so I kind of felt, okay. Like, one of the things was where they would snap their fingers and you'd see the actual set in colour and just how abysmal it looks like, and it's like, this doesn't look intimidating, this doesn't even look like a bar set. Look, there's yellow bricks. We couldn't even afford brown bricks to make it look like a bar, and it'd be way too dark. Another inspiration was a series of videos I saw called Who Killed Markiplier. I really loved the cinematography of the series. I loved the detective character being... some of his lines had me in hysterics, and in fact I kind of used one of the lines to... like the third act of the production.
What the hell happened?
Some thugs tried to whack me off before I could finger our lead.
Have you heard of phrasing before?
And a lot of it is just film noir tropes that I've just picked up on when watching films, when watching student, films, actual films for inspiration. The fact that you kind of look at the reality of the situation and you think, oh, that's complete bull. That doesn't work. It's funny, how ridiculous it gets. I looked on the internet on Google Images for what the dames kind of look like to kind of base Ren, her character, her outfit off of. Obviously, using Lego is very difficult for a variety of range because not everything fits. Like, there's not a very big diverse range for clothing and such, so I've had to be a bit creative.
Relax.
Alright, so, after I've built the set, which in this case is the bar, I've got to be able to furnish it. Working with animation means that I have to kind of scale things down to a pretty human proportional size. So, how a bottle is compared to in size a human would be kind of the same as a minifigure with a bottle relative to their size. Sometimes it's a bit bigger, but you have to kind of make allowances depending on the piece as to what you need. If everything was to scale, then I'd be working with very tiny pieces. However, I don't always have the right things, pieces, or whatever to create what I need. So that's when I go online and buy backup. This set is actually a pool table for the bar set, and this lot is actually going to be a bar countertop with like shelving and such. So, without further ado, let's get to the build and furnish the place. Working solo or working in a group, which is better? Well, really depends on what sort of person you are. If you're someone who likes to sort of manage themselves, get on with the work at any point in time, working by yourself is great. If you like to kind of either be in charge or you work better with other people, group work is better for you. Both areas do have their own pros and cons, as I personally am going through at the moment. You see, working by myself means that I am my own boss. If something isn't on time, it's my fault. If something needs to be done, it's down to me. I can work on a script in my own time. I could get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and just work if I really needed to, or if I had the sudden urge to. There is no one else that I need to answer to regarding progress, except for my uni lecturer. But aside from that, working solo, even in an industry standard, if you're self-employed, you are working for yourself, by yourself. The best thing about it is that you don't have to worry necessarily about having to rely on other people. So, case in point, when I used to work on group projects, I used to get very frustrated because of the fact that you'd assign someone a task, and to be honest, this actually has been creeping its way into my final project in other areas, which I'll get to in a bit. But when assigning someone to a task, a lot of the time when you have set a deadline, so say I ask someone to research something and I've given them a week. Come next week, I've got my work, everyone else has got their work. Why has this person turned up to me and said, I don't have it, I didn't do it? And it's sort of like, well, everyone else has got a fair chance. You are relying on that one person to do it, and if their ethic is not up to the standards you need it to be, then you are just having that time wasted by someone when that time could be put towards doing something else. Working by yourself means that you don't have that. If you don't have a script done for the deadline you've set it, and you were perfectly capable of being able to do it in that time, you have yourself to blame. You don't have to have a go at like Johnny or Tom or whatever, or whoever. It is solely your own personal fault, so that's how you are able to learn. However, one problem that I have found so far in pre-production, bearing in mind I have to start production next week, at the time that this is being recorded, I am still in the pre-production phase of our assignment, and I've still got the rest of the month until the deadline, but at the moment, considering animation takes a lot longer than live action, I need to start as soon as I get a break, which is next week because it's half term. Because I animate by myself, I have to do a lot of the jobs myself. I have to direct, produce, edit, animate, fill out all the forms, do one of the voicings, just to save on time, the script, the pre-production, actual production, post-production, everything. I have to do the role of jack of all trades. I have to do every role. I'm just thankful that I've got people that can help voice act. But in a group, you can assign jobs to people and go, right, you work on the script and the storyboard. You work on getting our location. You do the kind of like chase up on people that need to be chased up on. I'll handle the risk assessments. You can even the workload out to those in your group so that you are working effectively and you are keeping in touch and you are still kind of, making sure everything is going accordingly. So, again, when you work by yourself, you are your own boss. You can call whatever shots you want, do whatever you need, and have it in your own, work at your own pace. You don't feel like you're waiting on other people. However, if you're unskilled in certain areas and you need someone, that is a big drawback. The work gets tremendously overwhelming, and I've been prone to a good number of mental breakdowns. My health, both physical and mental, has not been particularly great during the production or even pre-production because of so much I have to do and how I am not giving myself time to take a breather, which I am slowly learning. But it can get too much. Working in groups lets you spread out the load. Also with groups, creativity. I mean, I have spent nights working on the script, and there are a lot of times when I've gone through a scene and I've thought, is that going to work? Is that not going to work? Because if you have too much of your own input, you start to think, it's fine. I'll just bung it in there. And then when you actually, record it and you give it to the audience, you have a very lukewarm response. Working in a group, you can bounce ideas off other people. You can call a constructive, creative meeting with other peers. You can focus groups. That's the word I was looking for. You can call a focus group. Just have people sat down, read out the script, make the scene, act it out if you have to. But people will be able to say, yeah, that works, or yeah, that was funny, or that could do with a little bit of work, or yeah, that needs improving. So far, I've managed to have a good lot of help from one of my lecturers at uni, because they know what they're doing, I don't, so that really does help. But they've gone through the script in one of its draft forms when it was unfinished and said, yes, you need to take this bit out, you need to change this is funny. And actually hearing the response from them as they're reading it helps tremendously, because you know relatively well what kind of a reaction you will get to a demographic of audience, if not generalised. I mean, if you look at stuff like slapstick humour, which is a very general form of comedy, then, you'll get a certain laugh. So, the script for my final piece is, it was finished about 2 days ago. And we're kind of like, again, the time of recording this is 8th of February. The script was finished a couple of days ago, so about 6th of February I finished the script, which, again, going back to the previous point of solo versus group work, honestly I'd have loved to have had a group to work with on things like this, because it would have been done much faster. Anyway, on to the synopsis. The main focal point, or the main overview of the story is a detective called Mike Caruba is investigating a missing persons crime, where it seems that that person gone missing has more to hide than just themselves, not giving much of the story away. The main focus of this short film is mainly comedy, if not a little bit of satire here and there. It's definitely got some form of meta-humour, I believe it's called. Fourth wall breaking, definitely homages to the film noir genre. And yeah, just kind of really fun. A fun, kind of quirky little delving into what my head thinks of when I look at film noirs in general, and when I watch a film and I go, oh, actually, that could be quite a funny joke. Okay, so the main character is Detective Mike Caruba, or Mike Caruba, and honestly, he's supposed to be your typical detective trope. The private eye that slinks in the back streets, he is not above the law, but more kind of that fine line between law enforcement and criminal dealings. He doesn't do things by the book. He drinks to keep himself sane. Very stereotypical kind of trope for a detective, with a few twists. You see, I decided to make this character in a lot of film noirs you have monologuing. And normally that's done through inner, non-diegetic elements. So, you kind of hear him kind of grumble and say things and what he's thinking. However, the joke is throughout the entire film, he is outwardly saying this. So, everything you hear that is supposed to be a thought practically is what he's saying out loud, and everyone else can hear him, including the people that he is most likely talking about. This sets up a lot of the humour, which in a lot of film noirs it's something that was very mysterious. We're actually hearing what the main protagonist is thinking. That's kind of interesting. To you do realise you're actually talking out loud and I can hear you, and what you have to say is relatively not something I want to hear type humour. So, you know, it's kind of harkening back to film noir. Our second character would be Dame Wren, or Dame Wren. The illustrious dame kind of personality. Again, film noir trope. As I believe, I can't remember who necessarily said it, but it was, the more beautiful the dame is, the darker and more sinister her plans are behind that smile. So I went with kind of the character of Dame Wren as this, not sultry, but sort of very slightly seductive. So, someone who kind of wants something, you can tell they've got a motive, but you don't know what it is until when it's revealed, or at least very slightly hinted at. You start to see the personality become a little more desperate than normal. Her whole role is that her brother has gone missing. Obviously, when you've got missing family, you look for someone to find them, and the fact that as she puts, the police force cannot do anything. So, yeah, it's one of those kinds of things. But there is a bit more to this missing person than she's letting on, which is very, very mysterious. We've got other characters, for example, we've got Mob Boss Big Zam. Obviously these videos will probably be for reference, I'll probably redo the damn things, but you know. Mob Boss Big Zam. He is the kind of leader of the criminal underworld. He's mainly found in the bar. He's a heavy smoker, heavy drinker, but not the cheap stuff, the good stuff. I mean, obviously, if you've got to the status of leader of the criminal underworld, you want some good, some decent booze and some Cuban cigars to show off how important you are. And Mike tends to meet him in the bar in the film, and they kind of get to talking. With Big Zam, which I'll kind of explain the reasoning behind the names and bits in the inspiration video. With Big Zam, I wanted to go for a mob boss who isn't stoic, isn't a hard ass. He is someone that when he is around, you can tell he is the boss. You do not mess with him. You do not try and jerk him around. You do not try and get one over on him. And if you are in trouble with him, you know to leave town the closest opportunity you get, without him having to be physically intimidating. He also has a rather jovial side. As in one of the lines, he's, I want to know the name of the man who's got the sheer balls to sit at my table with my fellas, my goons, and actually ask me information. It's kind of a bit of a laid-back thing than just being a stereotypical, right, here's something you need to do, go do it, I don't negotiate type thing. We've also got people like, there's probably in the bar set over there. We've got people like Weasel, who is the bartender, and he gets his face smashed in by the detective because he's withdrawing information, or at least withholding information. And yeah, Mike doesn't like that too much, and so he basically slams his head into the countertop a couple of times and just goes, "Look, this is fun and all, but you're probably better off telling me than just kind of trying to keep it and play hero." We've got other characters like Johnny, very typical mafia gangster kind of guy. I don't really like using the word gangster too much these days, because a lot of people associate that with the more modern day gangster than the old, like 1920 to 1940 kind of mobster type, Tommy gun, cheap suit kind of characters. You've also got the victim, who is the missing brother. You've got Mr. Wilson, who is in a kind of like a 5-second joke. There's a few characters, but overall, they all play important parts. No character feels unnecessary, which is good, because if you have a film with unnecessary characters just to fill the gap, it's not worth it.